and click. I think I got it right here. So we should be
So
recording.
on my screen, it says recording.
It says we're recording. So I want to say hi, that I'm Mike London, and I'm visiting with artists who are working here in the Miami Valley. Culture Works supports so many artists and arts organizations throughout the Valley. And this is an opportunity to get to know a few of them. And so today I'm visiting with Andy Snow. And Andy, I'm not going to do a long introduction for you. I want you to tell us about you and your work.
I came to Dayton in 1974 to work downtown for an advertising agency. I had studied photography and philosophy at Princeton University and did a little graduate work at the radio TV school at Ohio University. I learned to write radio and TV scripts. So I came to Dayton to work for Kircher, Helton, and Collette in the top of the Grand Deneau Tower to write and produce radio and TV commercials for Reich's department store in 1974.
Wow.
So I watched through the window them build Courthouse Square, and that was my first downtown documentary project. I went on to photograph the building of the Schuster Center, and then on and on. I mean, now it's the arcade. I did the Levitt. I'm working on Main. I'm also working on, I'm that historical guy, after a while you live so long.
So, yeah, which is awesome. But I'm thinking, you're a photographer.
Right.
But was it always photography for you? I mean, I wonder about artists, and it's a question I have for so many, and that is, we may not know why we're an artist, but why are you a photographer and not a script writer or a musician or?
Well, I have a musician gene, and my daughter is a cantorial soloist at Temple Israel, Courtney Cummings, and she has the voice of an angel. My grandmother played piano. I sang in the choir. I wasn't very good, but I have a photo gene in my family. My great-grandmother was born in Brookville, and she was a photographer. She was born in 1874. She had her own darkroom. I have prints of hers that are over 100 years old. She taught my dad. He taught me. My Aunt Ruth, who's still alive in Arkansas, she helped me too. We were all in this community in Connecticut before we moved to Columbus, and then I ended up in Dayton. Dayton is, though, such a great community. As a young boy, I read all the books about the Wright brothers I could get my hands on, and then read them again. So I've always had a thing about the Wright brothers, never imagining I would spend my adult life in Dayton, Ohio. And this is the magic of Dayton. It brings you in, it gets you involved. It's big enough to have all this great stuff, but small enough you can be involved and make a difference if you want to. And then you meet up with all these great creatives that you've talked about and that we all know about. And I'm not just talking about artists, I'm talking about artisans, craftsmen, engineers, all the people that supported all the things that have happened here. And that, to me, is what is unique about Dayton. And that's why I love being here. My kids stayed here. My grandsons are here. My mother is here. And it's just a perfect community for me. It may not be for everybody, but I can't imagine not being here and not being downtown now for 30 years. And being able to access the great venues that we have and hear the music and see the dance. So in '83, it was Stuart Sebastian and Charles Wendelkin Wilson with the symphony. My grandmother was an impresario who brought the orchestras to Washington, D.C. She had her own concert bureau and, in fact, knew Lenny. That's what she called him, Lenny. And she knew Dwight Ike, helped with the inaugural ball. She had a concert bureau that brought Eugene Ormandy, all the orchestras to play at Constitution Hall in DC before, of course, the Kennedy Center was built, because that was in the 70s. So she was in the town I grew up as well. And I just grew up listening to great music, live music, never had music lessons, but because of my engineer dad, I think I learned about doing stuff with my hands and figuring problems out. And that's what's good for your brain. Doing creative things lights up your brain. If I'm making photos at the Schuster Center to live music, my brain is just, I mean, it's just amazing. It's just like energy.
When I
It's
look
a drug.
when I look
Legal.
at your photographs, I see a real range, and I'm curious if the subject matter for you has changed over the years, or do you go through a time when you have a passion for one thing or something else, or that you discover something about photographing these subjects that are exciting? I'm just curious about that.
That's a good question. I kind of like to do a little bit of all. I play niches, and at the same moment, I love to photograph people, and I love to photograph buildings. My first job actually out of college was working as a photographer for an architecture firm in New Jersey. And that is how I started that and learned. And I always loved wide angle lenses anyway. So it was a natural. And the light and the shape and the color, it all comes together when you get to that spot.
Sure.
And then now I have that moment of what I call the angels are singing, when I can just, it's like a voice that says, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh, that was it. Or if it's outside and it's, say near the river, I'll say out loud, okay, cue the bird, and a seagull will fly, or a lake gull will fly through, or an egret, or,
Yeah.
on a good day. But it's synchronicity, it's serendipity, all bundled into one.
But the range of, that's one of the things that was interesting to me, was the range of what you photographed. When I look at the pictures of the dancers, and that's something that I know about. When I look at those, you've really captured, incredible moments, and to be able to do that, and have those things which, when I look at the children, and they almost look like family portraits, if you will, but not in that most traditional staid kind of way. It's a wide range. It's really interesting.
I like it all, because it feels good. And I get to do what I want. I don't have a job. I have a joy.
So what's different, though, about photography now? Because I remember, I mean, you mentioned back in the 70s, and I was thinking, wow,
Yeah.
when I think way back, and I used to work in a dark room, and I don't think that's the world anymore, is it? Does anybody work in a dark room?
Well, some do. We call them archival processes now.
Yeah.
Seriously. And there are
Yeah.
great artists doing it at UD. Francis, for instance, is one. Scheinenberger, he's doing great archival process things. But I'm sort of the techno geek, and I started doing Photoshop in '95 with floppy disks that were, like this.
Yes.
2.5, no layers, only one undo, no history palette. And I taught myself out of a book from Adobe how to do Photoshop. I had a scanner, and I would scan my slides and negatives, so then I could do Photoshop and create images from Photoshop in that timeline. And now we're at version, I don't know, 15 or 20, whatever
Oh, yeah.
it means now, because it keeps. So then I taught digital photography and digital media at University of Dayton for a number of years during that transition timeline, 94 to about 2007, because most of the regular faculty was, in fact, darkroom based.
Sure.
I don't want to say archival, but and they were about my age too, but it's still good. Now I like being at the bleeding edge and learning new things, because that's solving the puzzles is what makes the brain happy.
So,
and that helps your health.
If somebody wants to see your work and they're not familiar with their work, where should they go?
Well, there's andysnow.com, and that's a site that's endures since '95, when I first built the first version, and there are layers to get down to most of it. One link seems to be broken, another one you need to have Flash to see how it works, which is why I dumped it, because we knew Flash was going away. And now so now I'm at a point where I'm ready to go to a Squarespace site and maybe do more sort of commerce oriented things of selling prints. I don't sell a lot of prints for walls except through organizations, or give them to like Stivers and so forth for them to raise money. And the Contemporary as well, Contemporary/DVAC, Dayton Visual Arts
Right.
Center, which is near and dear to my heart. The director lives in our building. So it's a great, great thing. And the Art Institute is actually where I went to make black and white prints when my children were born, that I still have, of course, these black and white prints of when my kids were babies, and they're now 41 and 36. So, it's been a while.
One of the things I thought was fascinating was looking at your use and your perspective on those photographs from the flood era.
Yes, thank you. Well, that was a project that really was a shift in the arc of my career. I mean, that really made a big, big difference.
How so?
Well, because I got national attention. I was one of the top 20 photographers in the American Society of Media Photographers organization. I joined in '85. And that is primarily, at the time, was photojournalists, and I did a lot of editorial work. I connected to an agency in the film days and worked for Forbes and Fortune and Time and Newsweek and Business Week and a host of smaller magazines, all of which are pretty much gone because of their websites now. But I have these cabinets over here are filled with slides and negatives and paperwork relative to that time. And that's my legacy. And that's my archive. And that's not all of them. Doesn't include the 100 terabytes of digital files I have in the computer room on RAID 5 drives, because I'm a geek too. You gotta be a geek. I'm suspicious of any photographer who says, I'm not really into equipment, man. But, you got to understand how the equipment works, and you got to take care of it, especially because it's not cheap. You don't want to throw it away. Now, iPhones are great too. I love Instagram. Instagram is where I play, I'm just going to try this today. Yeah. Take this photo and turn it into something and play with the colors and play with whatever you can to make it something that people might respond to. And it's always interesting to see what people like and seem to gravitate to, and what they don't. That says something about the viewer. It's not really as much about the maker.
Really?
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's photographs speak to people based upon their experience. It's a narrative, and that was my master's program at Antioch, was about talking about the expectation of narrative in photography, because it is a language. And as a philosophy major, it certainly seemed to fit together. That this is an evolution of communication, of course, that has brought us to where we are now, where, I make the comment, philosophy, photography, they both begin with PH and they end with PHY. And they're both about truth and reality, or not.
So I'm curious, have you had that experience of creating something and then being surprised at someone's reaction to it?
Yes.
Can you think of something like that?
Well, for one thing, I find, especially on Instagram, there's a range of colors that people respond to the most, and it tends to be reds, purples, oranges. And I attribute that to sunrise and sunset colors. And I think that's just in our ancient brain, and it feels good, or it just lights us up. Who wants to look at pictures of gray clouds? Well, probably not a lot of people. But that doesn't mean you can't make an interesting picture. But you're not going to get that kind of visceral reaction to gray. To good black and white, yes. Yes, of course. And I studied the masters with Peter Bunnell at Princeton, who was the David McAlpin Professor of Photography as Fine Art, the first such chair in the country, if not the world, of photography as art, because he worked for John Sarkowski, who was the guy at the Museum of Modern Art who brought the family of man to MoMA, as well as heralded the idea that Stieglitz started in terms of photography is art. It's art. You know, it's just as much a visual art as painting or sculpture or any other printmaking. I just am so pleased that I can do it and make my own prints here, and I'm pretty picky, pretty particular.
Who's
It's all good.
Who's doing something out there that you find exciting?
Oh, that's a good question. Portraits. You know, I see a lot of really interesting portraits.
Really?
I gravitate more to, yeah, I do. I mean, and what you can do with digital and lighting and
Sure.
The way they pose people. I see now on Instagram a lot of collage work, which is Photoshop on steroids. That's really fun. It's actually a hashtag collage art, and these are collages that may mimic a historical painting or something or not, or just so have such different elements somehow put together in a really fascinating way that you just go, wow, I'd like to do that. But I think you have to, I don't know how that evolves, how you suddenly can just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to do this, and this. Back to the flood and the flood project, if I go back to that, I did during the first 2 weeks of this situation, where so 21 of them took the old and the new and blended them together and made them into what I call flood blends, or bending time space is the other hashtag.
Tony, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. I think we had a little internet glitch go on.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think it may have even been on my side. So what I'm going to do is just ask you to go back real quick and tell us about the flood project. What was it? Because I think you got cut off.
Right. The original flood project was looking at the oldest photos of the flood. I mean, the old photos of the flood of 1913. Mm-hmm. All the cities between Piqua and Hamilton, picking sites, going back to those sites, and seeing what was there in 2012, so it would be ready for a show at the Art Institute and the book in 2013. So 99 years difference. So that was a big deal. That project put me on the map locally and nationally, and that was a wonderful thing. So then, during this, in a couple of weeks, just a month ago, I sat down and looked at those and said, you know, I created a dissolving slideshow of the images, and then I would stop it and look at what they looked like when they were both sort of half there on the screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and I go, that's kind of interesting. And so I went back and I took this set of 21 from, try to make sure every city was represented, and it is, and made a blend, made a then now time shift image to just play with my Photoshop skills, really, but just to see what would come out, you know, and you never really knew until you sat down and did it. And sometimes things lined up and sometimes they didn't. Sometimes things were but make an interesting photo. So that's what, and then my wife, bless her heart, Sue, would be my best art director, critic, and confidant and helper in terms of, well, okay, but I think oh yeah, let me try that. And so sometimes I had to actually move, not tilt shift, but sort of resize and reconfigure the old to fit in where I wanted it in the new, or vice versa. And then really all that is layer masking after that. You're just playing around until, you know, and then you go away, come back, look at it again, go away, come back, make a few tweaks. And then suddenly you just know when, okay, that's done. That one's done. I'm going to go on to the next one. And I'm projecting a show about that sometime in the new year after people can get together again.
Right.
Either probably at the Contemporary, or it could be in 22, because in 22, that will actually be 50 years of being a professional photographer because of that first job with the architect firm in New Jersey, just
Wow.
to circle it all back around.
Yeah.
So 50 years, whoa, can I be that old? I was 3 when I started, I swear. No.
We all were.
Yeah, we were all 3.
We were all prodigies, right?
Yeah, right. Sure. But when I was 13, I have a photo of me with my little Brownie camera when I was 13 years old.
Oh,
And
that's
I
right.
actually took it to Valley Forge and made photos. And that's where I learned my first lesson about photography. Brownies don't take telephoto pictures. It's a fixed lens, dude. You're not going to
Wow.
see compressed tents, thousands of tents. No, it
Yeah,
doesn't work
yeah,
that way. So pay attention to what you see in the viewfinder. Don't think about what you want to see. Think about what you do see.
yeah.
Dorothea Lange said, the camera is an instrument to help people to learn how to see like a camera.
Wow.
I love that quote. I got a stack of quotes, but that one, and another one did talk. Another happened to be a woman who said, she talked about that moment of hearing the angels. And I had no idea. I've been saying that for years, and someone actually said that. And it's a quote by, I'm not gonna remember who, but it's okay.
Yeah. Let me ask you one other question,
Certainly.
because I know we're limited on time.
Yeah, we are close.
Um, but I do want to ask you, when you look at other artists that are here in town, that are in the
Mhm.
Miami Valley, whether they're visual artists or performing artists, who excites you?
That's another good question. Well, the people I see and know from University of Dayton, as I spoke of,
Right.
are certainly out there doing great historical, interesting, and not just historical, but work based on historic processes, and that
Sure.
is fantastic to me. Um, I'm trying to think who are my favorites here in town. Well, what I love is seeing more women photographers because I think they have a little different perspective. And, but I never, I guess I want to say the best thing I can say is it's the photo that takes you.
Mhm.
We don't take photos, we make photos. That's what Zarkowski did say. I don't like to talk about shooting pictures because shooting is just a word I don't want to hear. Nothing leaves the camera. We receive photons and then we manipulate their representation from the screen or from the negative that we had in the enlarger or the scanner in the past. Locally, it's such an amazing range of, I guess I can't really pick one out to say, wow, this is it. I mean,
Are there,
there's just a lot of it's.
sure. I'm wondering, are there artists that are non-visual artists, that are performing artists that inspire you?
Well, Sherry from
Yeah.
DC. I mean, I've known her forever, and watching her last performance, I was sobbing in my seat, but
Mhm.
quietly. But I was welling up. It was just DC, so close to my heart. The ballet as well, and who actually. Scott Robbins doing the DCDC and DCDC, the DCDC and the Dayton Ballet photos has been able to take it to a new level because the sensors are so much better than the film we had. When I made the photos of Stuart Sebastian, Kodacolor 1000 had just come out. So I could make photos in the dance area of the Victory Theater at the time.
Yes.
So that really gave us a change. We had black and white 3200 film with grain the size of golf balls, but that was something we could do. Digital, and especially in the last 5 years, the sensors are so good that it's incredible. And to me, the and Scott Robbins is just doing phenomenal work, either with the stage performances as well as in his studio with strobes and stuff. His wife is a dancer.
That's wonderful.
And that I'm sure helps. But that is not to diminish his talent at getting that amazing moment. So here it is, Scott Robbins. He's the one that really makes me go, yeah, that's a photo.
And he's an artist working right here in the Valley.
Yes, he is. Yes, he's been doing it for a number of years, and he is sensational.
Wow.
His work is sensational. Performing arts work beyond the pale.
Yeah. Andy, I wish we had more time today. Thank you so much for this. I want to say to everybody who's listening and watching that supporting Culture Works is, in fact, what helps to support the arts in our community and the artists, like the artists you're meeting through these interviews. They're an indispensable asset for our community. If you want to know anything more about Culture Works, do me a favor, go to www.cultureworks.org and you'll learn all about donating to Culture Works. You'll learn about all the benefits of being a Passport member. And so we hope you do that. There'll be lots more interviews this month, and I hope you catch them all. Andy, thank you. I hope we can do this again.
Yes, this was fun. I love this. I love Zoom. I just started doing it a couple of weeks ago, and now you got to do it all the time.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're doing a lot more Zoom than we ever planned, aren't we?
Practice makes perfect. We say that in photography too. It's a practice.
Yeah. And congratulations. Before I left, I do want to say congratulations on receiving one of the 2020 Governor's Awards in the Arts.
Thank you so much.
Kudos, my friend, kudos. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll end it here. Take care.